In this review, we talk about the Climbers. This is a game that is much heavier than you would imagine by looking at the box, because basically the box is full of wooden components. It is a brick of wooden blocks with a small layer of other components here. So there's a lot of game in here, component-wise. As for strategy and mechanics, however, the game is very light. It is a very light abstract game in which players will work on a structure of wooden blocks. They will rearrange them, move them around, reshape the general composition to create platforms that then their characters, their pawns, can climb. And they're trying to go as high as possible, and in particular higher than the other players. I guess in general it is maybe a metaphor for human aspirations, for reaching the impossible, etc., etc. But again, in truth, it is a very simple abstract puzzle. So, without further ado, let's take a closer look at the Climbers. The game is played on this bunch of wooden blocks that are assembled in some sort of structure at the beginning of the game. I have to be a little vague here because the rules are vague. The rules tell you put them together, and that's about it. So it's kind of fun if different players work together on it. Also, if they do it randomly, if you spot somebody's trying to put together certain patterns that will help them later, that's not totally cool. Now, you have three types of blocks. The small block that can be placed horizontally or vertically, the cube, and then the long, I don't know, the big rectangle. It's important that you remember that the height of the little one is level 1, is 1 unit. And so a cube is 2, and this other guy here is 4, but 2, like a cube on this side here. Once we have that, each player takes a pawn, a blocking disc, and 2 ladders, a short one and a long one. Your objective in the game is to climb with your pawn as high as possible. And so you should try to get at least 1 level higher each turn. When all players pass in a row, because no one can climb any higher than they are, the game is over, and at that point the player which is on the highest level of the composition of the situation here is the winner of the game. Now, the rules are very simple, but the rulebook doesn't do that great of a job to explain them. For a game this simple, I realized that I spent quite a bit of time on Board Game Geek reading posts and threads about the rules, because the rules seem to make sense the first time that you read them, and then as soon as you start playing, you realize there are many cases that are not covered by them. For example, we are told during setup you cannot leave pieces hanging out there. You cannot have holes like that, and that's fine, but then the rules don't tell you that restriction also applies later in the game. It appears that yes, that's the case. No hanging pieces and no holes during the game. Now, when it is your turn, you will get to move your guy, you move your pawn, but your pawn can only move on surfaces of his or her own color, like blue in this case, or the neutral color, which is sort of like cream color. Depending on the circumstances and the light, is not all that easy to tell from the yellow color. So just make sure that you have plenty of light and the right kind of light when you're playing the game. So you can only move on your own color and the cream/neutral color. Also, you can only move up by 1 level at a time without the help of a ladder. If you want to go up by 2 levels in a single move, you need to use this ladder here. If you want to go up by 3 or 4 levels in a single move, you need to use this ladder here. However, these ladders are single use. Once you use them, they're gone, which by the way means that they look very cute, but in truth you don't need to have them on the board, because as soon as you quote-unquote put them there and you use them, they are discarded. Simple tokens with a suffix. It's kind of cute to have them, but again, not necessarily very useful. You have a desk, a blocking desk. Again, once used per game, you place it anywhere on any surface which is unoccupied. No one can move the block or move on the block until it's your turn again. Until it's your turn again, and then you discard the block. So you can move up one level at a time, unaided, only your color, only the neutral color, but also at any time during your turn, you can move one block. And again, here the rules are a lot vague. You can move any one block of which you can see the top surface, which is unoccupied, and you can move it anywhere as long as it keeps touching the overall structure here. Other than that, you can rotate it, you can change the orientation, but again, no hanging parts and no holes. So for example, here, suppose the light blue is here and light blue does want to go up. Now light blue wants to have a look at the bottom of this one here. Oh, look at that, lucky. This one is the neutral. So now light blue goes like that. Light blue could also go here because you can go any distance for as long as you don't use any other color which is not your own or the neutral color, but for reasons that even I'm not sure about, blue has decided to do that. And then suppose is purple's turn. Then purple actually could go here, and then since these are neutral, purple could go there too. Then it's red. The red's turn. What could red do? Because as you can see, you can look under the cubes as long as you put them back. You can have that information. You can have that information. Maybe red wants to do this. Would this make any sense? I don't know. Just for fun. Red also does here, which is neutral, and goes here. Why? I don't know. I just decided that that's what's going to happen. It's also possible in certain circumstances that you move from a block, you move that block, and then you move on it again, or you move somewhere else. So again, at any point during your turn also means in the middle of your move. Suppose that now it's time for blue to go again, and now blue decides to move this one here, and light blue goes there. Purple, what could purple do? Purple is kind of stuck here. Is there a purple color here? There is one, and purple decides to use, not the short ladder, but the long ladder to climb up 3, and this is where purple is. Purple could even go here actually now. And maybe next turn purple does this, because again, as you can see, there's only one level of difference, so purple can go up there without any trouble. Then purple can go up here. Just an example of how you can go pretty high. And again, blocking discs will play a role in the entire situation. So basically, actually, as the game progresses, the shape will change. True players from time to time will travel together and will share spaces, but after a while, players will specialize, and you'll start seeing that the structure starts splitting into differentiated, increasingly independent towers. Again, you continue like this, move yourself, move blocks until players all pass in a row, and then at that point you determine the winner. There's also a variant that I do recommend in case you're playing with 2 players, that is, the game ends when both players pass twice in a row. Because with only 2 players moving things around, yes, you do need a little bit of leeway and moving this block now, but not getting one level up, not climbing higher, because I'm simply preparing a situation for the following turn. With more than 2 players, there is more pressure, of course, again, precisely because each turn you have to move, and that means that you need to be able to figure out how to create a good situation within a single move, or if actually when your turn comes around you already can climb higher than you want, then you can use your move to do something else, that is to build, to prepare for the following turn. Anyways, in general, this is how you play the climbers. I found this game to be okay. I didn't hate it, I didn't love it either. I played it mainly with my daughter Amelia, who has the same impression. She was okay. She didn't say, "Oh, we can't finish this game, it's too boring or too silly," but also she was like, after playing this, she asked me, "Why don't you play that other game instead?" So, the climbers, it's okay. It's okay strategically and tactically, I would say. It's actually much more tactical than strategic. I guess there are different layers of strategy that can emerge after a while, but I could not escape the feeling that, after all, the game was about looking around to see what is the next block that has a surface of my color that I can actually take, that is not locked by other blocks, and I'll place it next to where I am, and then jump on it. And then I place another block there, and I jump on it. Basically, after a while, you're just placing the block where you are, the next block next to where you are, and then back on top of it, because the surface that you came with from most likely is, well, just the right height, that if you add something to it, then it's going to be a level of 1, and so on and so forth. So after a while, you just have these towers that look very similar to one another. And again, I guess if you run a complete analysis of all the blocks that are there, and so you turn the work into the game into homework, then you can really strategize. Well, I'm going to take this block now and that block now, and in 4 turns I'm going to take that block now, which will mean that all the blocks that my opponents want will be locked or unavailable. But in truth, who's gonna do that? So actually, my impression was that you were pretty much doing what seemed to be the obvious thing to do from one turn to the next, until at a certain point you run out of available cubes. But that seemed to come kind of like anticlimactically. And I didn't have the impression that you had much control over that. Yes, you can throw a curveball to some players once in a game by placing the disc that prevents a cube from being moved. In some cases, however, you want to use it to protect the cube that you're going to use next turn. Here I'm talking about cubes just for simplicity in general. I mean blocks. I mean blocks, all the blocks that are in the game. So you can throw a curveball to other players that way, or you can play more carefully, protecting your interest. But again, that's going to be a decision that happens once per game. Those ladders, is fun to have them, but again, very often, especially the one that allows you to climb very high, once you get there, you're kind of like stuck there, because then it's going to take you a couple of turns, if you're very high from where you were before, to build the platforms where you can go next turn, and it has to be built by exactly one level up there. So it seemed to me that the game was based on fairly obvious decisions on what to do next, and really took a lot of work to strategize over that, to create chains of events, of situations in which you'll be able to really get a killer, strong strategy. On top of that, of course, you have to take into account the fact that by the time the game comes back to you with more than 2 players, there may be, well, a lot of different changes may have happened to the board. So, I don't know, I thought it was not bad, but it seems to me a little bit obvious. It lacked a certain, I don't know, a certain je ne sais quoi, a certain spark. In a sense, it reminded me of Santorini, which also may have that quote-unquote problem. You can get stuck into jumping right and left, but in truth, you have more options, you have more game pieces you can move, you have different abilities. So to me, Santorini, this almost felt like a simpler Santorini with fewer rules, but also a lot less interest, a lot less depth. It seemed to me pretty obvious. Again, I didn't mind it. I think it could be a good game if you're looking for a really simple, really casual, really linear abstract game. Component-wise, is great. The production, playing with those blocks is fun. But of course, if you're playing with a set of wooden blocks, with a toy set, then you have the same tactical feel. The idea is, do these interesting game elements also work in interesting design? To me, those game components are good per se, visually, from the tactile point of view, but from the point of view of the design just didn't, something was missing. I didn't click with the design. But again, I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. It was somewhere in between. It was a little bit in the meh category for me. The Climbers, that's what I think about it.